Service, Alpena Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office in Waterford. Somebody earlier referred to Jim as the sturgeon cheerleader from Detroit, so he's up.
All right, thanks, Tom. What a great meeting. First off, you guys have a really active AFS chapter, which is really, I find, quite remarkable. Michigan, where's Justin at? Well, yeah, Justin, raise your hand. Vote for Justin. He's going to be the next president, potentially, if you have an opportunity. And we'll try and follow what you all have put together for a meeting like this. So, cheerleader, I guess, is probably one of the more contemporary roles that I find myself in, moving away from more and more of the biology, and I find myself with a staff of 10 people now, delegating more and more of this out to the folks that are much younger and more energetic than I am anymore to do the biology work. But this is going to be a bit of a shift from the biology portion. We've kind of dovetailed these two talks, mine and Ed Roseman. Ed's going to be talking about the biology. I'm going to be talking more about the process and how we have been successful in the Chiotti corridor, the connecting waterways in Detroit, to bring folks together to get a lot of work done. And first thing you're going to notice is the number of folks that are on the slide here and the agencies represented. And this is just a, sort of a small segment of the folks that are out here getting this work done. And the thing I like to tell my staff is that we don't work with agencies, and I point this out to all you folks. What you're going to find is you work with people, and those people work for agencies. And the sooner you learn that in your career, the more successful I think you're going to be, because it's really the people that get the work done. It's not agencies that are getting the work done. And so having opportunities to have representation for all the folks that have been involved with our work, we are consistent in our messaging and the way that we do our business. So just kind of put you on target for the area we're talking about. Southeast Michigan, I run a station down in Southeast Michigan on the Chiotti corridor, as I'll refer to it. Stutters just never rolls off my tongue quite right, but the Chiotti corridor, the HEC, is the connecting waterways between the southern end of Lake Huron and the western end of Lake Erie. So it's St. Clair River and the Detroit River. And Ron referred to this as one of the largest free-ranging populations remaining in the Great Lakes. And I don't know if it's larger than the Winnebago system, but it is certainly a very large population that's been persistent in this system, in spite of all the things that we've been talking about here earlier this morning. So I put this slide in here, and it's a little bit out of place. I really need to be pulling a talk together that really focuses on this collective impact model. But there's two models that I'm going to show you. There's this one and this adaptive management process. This talk was really structured around adaptive management process, which is how we're getting large sums of money from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to delist the AOC of the Detroit and St. Clair River. And this is the process here, but I want to go back. There's 5 conditions of a collective impact model. It's having a common agenda and shared measurements, so the data collecting and measuring results, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication and open communication, and that is sort of the people part of this. You build trust at meetings like this, so it's important that you all, when you head back to your respective agencies, pass on the information and the new networks of people that you've sort of brokered with these new deals and things you do, and most of the time it's at the mixers. And I had somebody tell me with the Great Lakes Commission, we really should have about an hour or 2 of talks, and then have like 6 or 8 hours of the after party, because really that's where the road, the rubber hits the road with a lot of work that takes place. It's the stories and the conversations you all are having out there, I think, that really resonate and stay with us long term. So separate organizations with staff to basically maintain the support, and that's kind of critical in some of the things that we've been, because of Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, been able to pull together. Ed Roseman's here, and USGS has been one of the key groups that's been involved with maintaining and fostering this and keeping us on track. So I'm going to walk through sort of the 6 points on this. Assessing the problem, building consensus. Again, that's that, going back to this collective impact model, that consensus, developing a restoration plan, that's kind of built in there too. Implementing restoration, and then monitoring and evaluate. And very early on with some of the earlier projects, this is pre-Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and some of the earlier funds, a big project was getting $50,000 to do work. And more times than not, they just wanted us to move rock. Well, you can't do assessment with these monies. And I'm preaching to the choir here, you folks are all scientists, and you know how valuable the information is, and you have to measure that. You got to get out there and work with the resource, and it's challenging to get the funding agencies to agree to this. My advice to you all, when you run into that, don't move away and say, well, if we can't do assessment, we're not going to do this work. Find a way to get money. Dovetail your projects with partners and the expertise that they can bring in. Identify people. Don't work in a silo. Get out there, network, find out what expertise others can bring, and accept that you can't do all of this. So the sooner you do that, you'll be able to figure out a way to monitor this. Maybe do a portion of it. Maybe you can provide a boat, maybe provide some more staff to get the work done. But you make it happen, because it pays dividends on the other end of this. When you can go back to the funders and say, here's the results. What we said we would do, here's the tangible results. And that's critical for the next round of money and the things, and the partnerships continue to grow. So it also is part of the feedback loop with adjusting. The critical step, team makes adjustments, you modify your understanding of the problem, expand outreach and consultation, augmenting reef siting and design, and improving communication with contractors, the public, congressional folks, and the like. So enhancing monitoring strategies is the last portion of that crucial step. So the restoration team, again, it's about people, people, people. We have pictures of them, too many to name, but the point is we have scientists, and this evolved from 15 years ago. There were 5 of us that got together 10 of us that got together thereabouts from 5 different agencies, and we talked about, we got limited monies, what are some of the ideas that we all share? How can we move this forward? And we started to develop a level of transparency. We started sharing information and ideas. And it's grown from that to all of these agencies that are involved, and many of these agencies, there's multiple people that are involved. I think we're up to 30 agencies that are involved with this work that's taking place in the Huron Erie corridor. About 100 plus people. All of them have varying levels of expertise that they're bringing to the table. So kind of walking through the 6 steps, assessing the problem, evaluate current status, developing hypotheses to guide the action. Ron talked about this. We know what some levels of the history were with these places. Most of them, we've altered the landscape. And maybe we never get back to what was there historically. But some of the earlier writings with, don't set your sight too low. If you want to get somewhere big, John Hardig, my colleague from the Refuge, his mantra is, go big or go home. Shoot big. Let them tell you no if you can't get there, and then come in somewhere else. So, St. Clair-Detroit River system, huge runs of fish spawned here in addition to sturgeon. Largest commercial Great Lakes fishery in the late 1800s. Today, it's the origin of the commercial catch, $2 billion a year, and to me this is the so what question that I get from the congressionals and our state legislators. So why is this important? For all of us, the biology, that's what gets us all jazzed up every day we come to work. To the average American, they could care less. I won't say they could care less, but it's not anywhere near as important. But the economic component of this, $2 billion a year that's rolled into the engine of the economies, that has resonance with the people that fund the work that we do out there, the public and so forth. Jobs are tied to these things. More than 65 species of fish within the system we're talking about. 16 are T&E. Largest remaining population of sturgeon in the Great Lakes. This is what we did to the Livingstone Channel. It was a pretty amazing place. This is a dewatered section of the Lower Detroit River. That was this honeycomb limestone that supported spawning lake trout, used to migrate into the Detroit River, sturgeon, as well as a litany of other species. Walleye still utilize it, whitefish. Our group was part of the assessment, a success story. We found whitefish spawning within the system. Ed Roseman's going to talk much more about that. But you know, in a century, just to tell the public, in a century, your system, your neighborhood, the place that you live, the tax base that, you know, a place that typically, I love Detroit, and I say that at every meeting I go to, so there was my plug for Detroit. And it's an amazing place. We have one of the most robust fisheries remaining in the Great Lakes, in spite of what the news may portray of the place of Detroit. So here's the Livingstone Channel. They essentially put a coffer dam on it. The picture that is at your right with the ladder going down, that previous picture where it shows the honeycomb limestone would be at the top of the ladder. So they essentially dredged that out. No surprise here. We changed and altered the environment to do what we think sometimes are great things for humanity, and I question otherwise. Navigation channels, 60 miles of shipping channels, more than 30 million cubic yards of material that was excavated on there. Big changes. Evaluating the current status, the studies of historical and current spawning habitat, ongoing agency monitoring. Again, I come back to that. You know, find a way to make sure that you're doing this assessment, because it does pay dividends in the end. The folks that need this information, the accountability for EPA when they're signing off on the BUIs, they're looking at all of our data, the data that Ed Roseman and his crew, and the data that Fish and Wildlife and Michigan DNR. And these are groups that didn't have line item funding initially to get out there and do this assessment. You find ways, you make it work. Developing hypotheses to guide action, lack of spawning habitat limits fish production. The restoration projects focused on restoration of native broadcast spawners, designed initially to benefit some of the other recreational and commercially important species. Lake whitefish is not one of the species that is being supported by the reefs that we're constructing. And the initial thoughts on this, again, it's a community of folks that are involved with the decision-making process. Within my own agency, the Fish and Wildlife Service, our sea lamprey control folks, were animatedly opposed to putting smaller rock materials that would lend itself to spawning lamprey within our system. We have increased marking rates in the eastern basin with some of the other species of fish, the lake trouts and so forth, in the eastern basin of Lake Erie. So there was opposition to that. So we, integrated their request to use larger materials for this. Recovery state and province listed species, lake sturgeon and northern mad tom. Northern mad tom are a lot less charismatic megafauna. I don't know if you know what mad toms look like, but they're kind of little dodgy catfish, and people are like, what is that? It looks like a turd in your hand, Unlike sturgeon, which are captivating, and we have a marvelous resource. Those of you that work with it, work with these fish, tend to not want to work with anything else, right, Ron? Nancy, you start working with them and they're infectious and they're very captivating for the public. So Nancy, I appreciate the plug from our Port Huron Sturgeon Festival, and I was talking to folks about that out in the hallway. So Tom told me that we're going into lunch next. He said, you're running a little late. Don't necessarily worry too much about time. Ed Roseman's shaking his head because he knows when they give me the microphone, I can be like Ron. They promised me 40 minutes, and then I'm at 5 minutes now. They promised me 40 minutes, and they said, no, you need to condense it down to 20. I'm like, well, you can't tell me this the night before. So, at any rate, building consensus. This is a big one. We get congressional folks involved. We do this on an annual basis. Michigan Sea Grant, and again, we have constraints working for the federal government. We have to go through external affairs whenever we contact congressional folks. But if we get invited by one of our partners at Michigan Sea Grant and says, yeah, we got all these congressionals, do you want to come? I'm not organizing it. I'm one of the partners there that was invited to come. I send a note to our folks up in the regional office and say, we were invited. And they say, okay, you know, it's not us leading this. We're part of the partnership that's here doing this. Nancy talked about, you know, up at Port Huron, and I won't go into too much of that, but some of the other things that have come out of this, these are moving towards delisting the AOCs of the Detroit and St. Clair River, and that's the main focus of how this work came about. This is our group, a picture from 2 years ago, down in the lower right there. Again, transparency, sharing of information, bringing people together. We do this on an annual basis. We have our meetings just like this. It's critical for you all to be working together and come to these meetings and make time. Everybody, meetings, more meetings. But they are a critical process in our success of all the things that I'm doing and you all are doing, I'm convinced. Science coordination team, again, a litany of folks from a number of agencies. The partners and sponsorship, they just keep growing. People want to be part of this success story. The other half of this, when you get everybody's buy-in, when you have problems, which I'm going to highlight here at the very end, when you have problems, it also means we take ownership of the problems. Be transparent. It's not a perfect world. It's a stochastic, changing environment. People can model the hell out of the things we do. When you go out there and put the rock on the ground, things don't always respond how the modelers told you they were going to. So, restoration plans, some of the early examples that we use were more science-based, multiple rock types, cross-channel layout. I'll get into some of the issues, prioritizing, again, with the increasing technologies that are available, with ADCP modeling, this bathymetry, the side scan, you know, on our boats are $2,000. We put them on every boat. 10 years ago, it was a $100,000 unit that USGS was running to determine the bathymetry of these systems. These are deep water. They're not like Ron's talking about where you're standing in the water. Where the fish are spawning in the St. Clair and the Detroit, it's 30 to 70 foot deep water. It's in a shipping lane. It's a very different environment. Again, you've seen this before, reef shape, implementing and construction of this fish spawning habitat, bringing the right people in to identify, you know, the expertise that they have, the engineers that have been involved. We use a dump barge in some of the very fast-moving sites in the navigation channel, and then on some of the off channels that are a little bit slower, we use a GPS-guided crane and clamshell bucket. Reef Materials, again, we ultimately settled on this larger limestone, which may not be conducive for all species, but it's working very well for the sturgeon, and Ed's going to talk more about that. Construction oversight. These are parts of this work that many state and federal agencies get really tied up in the bureaucracy. So having entities that can go out and coordinate with the construction and the oversight and the fiduciary of the funds that you may be getting for some of these projects, it is really helpful to identify those agency folks or entities that have the best capacity to manage the funds and the oversight of these very large projects. So the number of reefs, we've got 7 completed, 10 reefs between assessment and the funding from the very earliest ones on. I think we're at about $10 million that have been pulled towards delisting these and completing these projects. Again, do I need to beat this home anymore? Monitor and evaluate. It's really critical to the success of these programs. A little bit of data. Ed wanted me to put a little bit of data in there, but I'm not going to steal his thunder. He's going to provide a lot of data. But essentially, before, after control impact studies. That's how this has been set up. Look at the environment, make some change, and then go back and evaluate what you did and are your results in line with what your expectations were. General recommendation, matching the spatial and temporal extent of biological responses and the physical stressors, monitor the physical and biological changes, use consistent methods over time, and measure quantitative response variables. That's from McLean et al. With some of the work that, you know, again, Ed and his group have worked on. This gets me to one of our problem sites. If we would have taken a cookie cutter approach and used one-size-fits-all mentality to this, we would have constructed this cross-channel design, And those of you that know a little bit about bathymetry, and this is kind of after the fact, we didn't have all the details, and now we've got a whole bunch of hydrologists that are involved that have high expertise and an understanding of this. I'm a fish squeezer, I'm not a hydrologist, so turn it over to these folks. And here's what happened. We built the reef in 2012. The red is the hardness, which kind of identifies where the initial rock was placed. And then you look at the 2013 slide, and we're essentially down to a narrow corner, about 25% of the original reef that's still functioning. The other portion of that essentially ended up getting buried. So there was a lot of turmoil within our group. Well, how do we handle this? What do we do? I said, you tell the public what happened. It's not a perfect world. It's an expensive mistake, no doubt about it. But how are we using this adaptive management framework, learning from the information that we had, to do it better? We're on the hook. We're public servants. Taxpayers demand that we do this and do it right. We told our congressional folks. They brought it to our attention. We're getting some feedback, from their constituents. So the connecting arrows, modified understanding of the problem, pointing to number one. Expand outreach and solicit new advice, which we did. Adjust the planning process, improve reef design, and again, that monitoring and evaluating. Imagine if we said, yeah, let's just put the rock up there. And we went ahead and did this all the way through. We would have been wasting, and I care about how much money my taxes are going to do things. So he's cutting me off here. Other adjustments, anchor stones, some changes in Fighting Island, and without delaying and getting into too much of that. There's a lessons learned document, and this is the main thing here. Follow the adaptive management framework. Use project case studies to help guide restoration planning, implementation techniques, and building and facilitating a successful team. And the last thing is the Science in Action document, I think, has application throughout the Niagara system, other places. It's not just specific to the Detroit. So it's about a 70-page document, a litany of folks that are involved with that, and it's available at the Michigan Sea Grant website, or see me after. I know I don't have time for questions, but thank you.